And we are on podcast number 3. This one is not recorded at 1 a.m. in the morning, so hopefully it'll have some better content. We have the final member of our group joining us today, which is Kane Wilson. Kane's claim to fame was one of the most successful international archers to break the toilet as many times as possible. I believe he achieved up to, 3 breakages within 2 days?
Oh, something along those lines.
Something along those lines. What a remarkable record. A real privilege to have him with us.
There was many calls to reception.
What a hero.
All right, so we have Kane, myself, and Ben, and also Hamish on the call today. So before we get into the podcast, Hamish is joining us from Armidale at the moment. So we might go live across to Armidale. What's the local standard time in Armidale at the moment, Hamish?
The local time is 9:45 at night.
Interesting, same as the time here.
Looks like it's the same country.
So is there any interesting news that's come from the last few days over there?
Well, I found out where all the shooting is on this local footy field with a cricket pitch in the middle, and we found out that it's just AstroTurf over concrete, and the clout shooting will be towards the cricket pitch. So if it so happens that someone shoots the cricket pitch, they might have a few broken arrows.
Just a few.
Wait, so not the whole oval, it's just a cricket pitch?
Yeah, just the cricket pitch.
So how far behind that's the clout going to be?
We don't know yet. We'll find out tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
Looking forward to it.
Can you get there early and shuffle one of the clouts to just behind the cricket pitch?
On top?
Oh, well, I can't say I will, but
Not in public.
it might happen.
So looking through the scores today, some of the honourable mentions was Finn dropping a 698, which would be the highest recurve score on the field, and probably the highest score ever recorded with a recurve in Australia.
Yep.
I reckon.
He is Barebo, is he not?
Finn's recurve.
You're thinking of young Hugo Lobb, who dropped a 666.
Yeah, which is probably the
yeah.
highest Barebo score ever shot as well.
Definitely.
How far are they shooting?
30 metres for Cub. Hugo's 30 as well, isn't he?
Yeah, because he's intermediate.
Yeah.
Barebo. So yeah, 37-20s.
Both from Archery Victoria.
Yep.
Which I might point out.
Well represented.
Mm.
What have you guys got to say to that from New South Wales and Perth?
I don't know. I haven't been far.
Yeah, cool. Good chat.
Yeah.
So the other, looking at the other scores, was it Nathan shot 700?
Yeah, Nathan Rowley.
Did anyone else crack 7?
Um,
Some of the other cadets and Cubs and
There are a
stuff.
couple of, I think, intermediate compound men that got in the mid-17s.
yeah, actually, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Did,
Which is
was Jai's from WA, isn't he?
Jai Francis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he shoot a world record at 60 metres yesterday?
Well, he shot 358, which, bloody, damn near close, if not a world record. Yeah, it was phenomenal.
Has it been verified or have they checked it or anything?
I don't know anything about it.
Okay. You're only team manager,
Yeah,
but that's
team
all
manager,
good.
cool.
All right. Yeah, right. So he dropped 2 points at 60 metres.
Yeah, he did.
I think also Tasman Forest dropped just short of the 700 mark for a 57-20.
For a
Believe-
50?
Yeah, I think as a intermediate, I believe.
That's scary good.
Yep,
Very good
she's
shooter.
intermediate.
Oh, well, I'm never going to shoot compound again, which is cool.
Especially in the women category.
Yeah,
That's gone now.
I'm never going to shoot
Yeah,
cadet
she
girls
shot
compound.
a 683, I think, today. 80-something, which is excellent.
Well, that's a world champs qualifier for senior as an intermediate, so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and Anna Walsh from Tasmania shot a 87, which is the highest female compound score in Australia in a fairly long time.
Absolutely schooled second place too, I believe.
All right. I'm not even going to go there, and we will move on. Thank you, Ben. So, moving to Don't touch me. Get off. So, moving to topic 2. So, Hamish wanted to mention this one. It's probably a fairly controversial topic in archery, but fitness in archery. So, as a bit of a backstory, so in 2011, for the Junior Worlds and for the Com Games the year previously, they brought in a fitness requirement where you had to run 2.4k in a specific time, which I think was like 11 minutes back then. And I think it was a good thing because it's only going to make you shoot better. But Hamish, did you have any thoughts on fitness and archery and the benefits or potential negatives?
Yeah, well, I mean, fitness in archery is important. I see archery as majority of it's a mental sport, but if you're physically fit, then you're going to be able to compete for longer and I guess hold for longer if you need to in the wind and draw higher poundages, etc., etc. As well as just that persona that you take care of yourself.
But do you think it would be more beneficial to train fitness-wise than actually just going out and shooting?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think behind the bow is more beneficial for archery than going for a run or hitting the gym.
So if you had to allocate it.
That's not to say you shouldn't disregard supplementative training.
Yeah, so you can only shoot so many arrows in a day before you're copping out just because you don't want to do too much damage. So if you supplemented those days with alternative exercise, you're saying that you're getting more training out of yourself because it's not just arrows you're shooting, and it'll help you. Well, that's right. And you don't drawing sort of if you're right-handed, then the right side of your body is going to be a bit more developed, or the right back. The muscles that you use on your right side are going to be more developed than the ones on the left. So you need to balance them out as best you can without sort of limiting your training in archery.
Plus, physical training can definitely have an impact on just like your general health. Like if you're reducing the amount of times in a year you're getting sick, the sort of injuries you're actually developing, you can really then fine-tune your actual archery training to be proper archery training. So if you're not being pushed by, getting cold during winter or suffering injuries that could have been prevented through being slightly stronger or slightly better protected against certain movements, then you're definitely going to be able to train better.
Yeah, I found that too, just especially going on trips 2015, 2016. There are a lot of trips we went on where we'd go to somewhere in Europe and it'd be really stinking hot and everyone would be really, complaining, and not our team necessarily, but other teams as well, really struggling with the heat. And I found that back then when I was shooting full time and had the time to train and run and do all that kind of stuff, it did make a difference. Just like Ben said, dealing with the changing climate, and especially from compound shooting, I've always found that if I'm not training the fitness side of things, my compound shooting tends to suffer more than my recurve shooting. So I really notice it in my aiming and my execution. And even though I might not be...
stability.
Huh?
Less stability.
Yeah, 100%. So if I might not be shooting a lot of compound, but if I'm not doing the fitness stuff as well, it really suffers. Whereas I feel like on compound, if I shot more arrows, it wouldn't give me as much benefit as the fitness side of things would.
I was told by I'm not going to name names, but I was told that it's either, is it going to be controversial? It's either you get mega fat or you have a mega strong core, and that'll that accounts for your stability. So, as far as I don't completely understand it, but I was told by a pretty reputable source, and it tends to make sense if you think about it.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You see the professional strongmen, and and the majority of professional powerlifters, and they're all have very high body fat percentages. They're not. You wouldn't classify them as fit. You classify them as like insanely strong, but they're not. They're not fit. They couldn't run a 2.4 in sort of under 9 minutes or anything like that.
Well, I guess you see it, especially in the World Archery videos too. I mean, Compound's always had that stereotype of having larger individuals, but
we'll call it larger frames.
Larger frames, big boned. Exactly, that's what I meant.
Sturdy.
The stereotype. Not that the Eliza Archery podcast condones or agrees with that statement, but the stereotype is. And I mean, it is, especially if you look at some of the recurvers too. Some of them internationally are quite large framed, and you watch them in the wind, and they just don't move. So I think
they're rock solid, eh?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there's something to be said for it. Probably wouldn't recommend a Big Mac diet to try and build that.
Wasn't that like your training up to Rio?
No, that's my training now.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you for writing out that meal plan for me, by the way, Hamish. I'm struggling to reach the 3 McChicken mark, but 2.5, I'll get there.
And I
just eat more of the fish ones.
the fish ones.
We'll ignore that advice from our end.
Yeah.
But also going with the sort of like larger frame, a bit sturdier individuals, you definitely, I reckon, find in archery that they're a lot stronger than their thinner build counterparts. If that, like, whether that's through their personal training plans or just through how they've developed their archery over the years, you usually find that like the larger archers are also a lot stronger.
Yeah.
And yeah, like obviously if it works, it's what's best for your archery, as long as you're not like, risking your own health at the same time.
Especially in the wind as well.
That being said though, it's a double-edged sword, because if you are strong in a number of ways, I think you're less likely to rely on a strong foundation, a strong technique, more likely to recruit muscles that you've just got to get the job done.
Yeah, it's... I don't know, it's always going to be...
Let's be honest, if you're in peak physical condition or shape, like, I think regardless, any activity you do, you're going to do it at a higher performance than if you are not fit.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of view it... I know it's a big debate among the shooters at the moment as well. There's quite a lot of shooters that refuse to kind of... Well, not refuse, but don't believe that they should do anything, and then the other half are very, very fit and going to the gym and doing that kind of stuff. But I think it kind of boils down to, at a international level, Australia's a long way away from anything. And so to get anywhere, we spend so long on a plane that the fitter you can be when you get off that plane and you have to go shoot, the better you're going to bounce back. So, performance aside, I think just travel-wise, if you can have a better level of fitness and get off the plane and recover from jet lag faster, adjust faster, deal with any sickness or whatever you caught on the flight or anything like that, I think for us, especially in the location that we are, I think that's where fitness really plays a big part when it comes to travelling.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think, all the other benefits aside, that seems like the biggest factor to me. Is there anything you guys wanted to add to that before we move on?
Oh, you could spend 3 hours on that.
Hamish?
Yeah, I mean, this is controversial, but I stand by it. And I see archers going to the world stage and representing their country, and like not just from Australia, and they're very clearly, like in my view, just unhealthy and overweight and whatnot. And I just don't feel like they can take pride in being an athlete on the highest level. And like obviously I might like them as a person, which is no problem, and they shoot great. But aside from that, they're just not the typical athlete that you'd think of.
I guess it comes down to image of the sport as well.
Yeah.
Probably poor role models as far as that regard.
So what would you say? So we've spoken about fitness. We haven't actually really spoken about things to get there. So Hamish, what would you actually say is a reasonable level of fitness, or what should someone actually be doing as far as cross training to improve their fitness?
Well, just do a bit. It's easy to say, but just do a bit of everything. I mean, if you're doing cardio for 3 or 4 times a week, and then metabolic conditioning and strength training also 3 or 4 times a week, and do a needs analysis on a timely schedule and meet your goals, then you can't really go wrong.
Hang on, so you're training 8 times a week, plus on top of that you'll be shooting. Bloody hell. Do you work?
What was that?
Yeah, so you're training 8 times a week on top of shooting. What, do you have time to work? Or
No, I bet I don't shoot a lot anymore.
Is that what you're doing at the moment, Hamish?
Hey?
Is that what you're doing at the moment, that level of training?
I train for about 5 separate days a week, 5 or 6, and within that it's 1 or 2 sessions a day.
But that's not realistic for archers who really have to shoot most days of the week if they want to be highly competitive.
No, well, I mean, for me personally, at this stage of my life, I'm trying to get into the military, so I'm training early in the morning and shooting whenever I can. It's not a high priority, and then I work away for weeks at a time. So yeah, I have a lot of free time when I'm not away for work.
Alex's question was, what do you think is a reasonable level for most archers to aspire to do as far as training?
I think what Kane's trying to say is it's not always about you, Hamish.
I didn't want to focus on me, but that's how I heard it. Sorry.
No. I mean, so if without going all out, because if someone's never, a lot of people haven't been in a gym for forever or don't, I think it can be as simple as just little things like, spending more time walking to the target and back, and maybe, running down to the target and back, or doing some light stuff with weights, or, something. I think consistency makes a big difference, because I think it can be quite daunting to have to start some kind of fitness thing, because a lot of it's not, unless you really enjoy it, it's not that much fun, because it hurts and you sweat, and it's not life. Yeah, it's not. I know for me, it's not something I get up in the morning and go, yeah, sweet, I want to go for a run or go to the gym.
Yeah, that's why it's good for you.
It is, but I think a lot of people simply won't do it because of that. So I think it's finding something that's going to increase their performance in archery and increase their fitness, but something manageable enough.
And a lot of the time,
you look at the top guys that are consistently winning, and you ask them, what's your fitness regime? And if they say nothing, well, then obviously it works for them. But then if they're sort of not the typical athlete aesthetically, then that's just well, could I be going to the gym to look like an athlete? And that's just, will it affect my results?
Yeah, but let's say someone's listening to this podcast, they're an archer, and they don't do any kind of fitness at all right now. What can we give them practically to do to start some kind of base level that's manageable, not too daunting, and easily doable?
Oh, well, just start small.
Yeah, you always want to start small. If they add, 30 minutes a day, not a day, but 30 minutes 2 or 3 times a week to their daily plan of some form of fitness, whatever they find most enjoyable. If they like lifting weights, lift weights. If they like running. And that's how you start. You start off with one thing of 30 minutes a day and see where that takes you, see how that improves. after you've found that sort of improvement, it might take 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 weeks, you can then go, okay, what else am I going to add? Am I going to add a next step to that plan?
Yeah, they can look at like the couch to 5K programs or go for a swim. Like swimming is bloody good for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Every single aspect, except if you drown.
As long as you can swim, it's quite easy.
Yeah,
I think this topic is a trap because we've all got so much to say on it that nothing's proven.
I think swimming is a good one to be brought up because I think that's quite an easy, non-daunting way to start because pretty much everyone can swim.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a good. All right, that's probably a good takeaway is to just start by getting in the pool and just doing some basic stuff because especially, I know as far as injury prevention goes, doing some swimming and stuff to keep both sides balanced out is really good. So that's probably a good takeaway for people listening as a baseline kind of start point is to just do a bit of swimming to get started. And then, yeah, I guess from there is that what leads into all the other stuff with running and weights and everything else.
Rowing is good as well because, especially for archery, it focuses a lot on your backs and your back and legs.
All right, well, that's probably a good discussion on the fitness side of things. So, looking at my notes, we take notes for this podcast because we're very professional. It's written on the back of an envelope at the moment. So,
incredibly.
So one thing I've got down here is to all talk about the worst thing that's ever happened to us in a tournament and the best thing that's ever happened to us in a tournament. So let's not be... I don't think we have to be super specific and limit this to an actual tournament. I think in archery in general is probably enough. So let's throw Hamish under the bus. And Hamish, would you like to bring up the worst thing that's ever happened to you at an archery tournament or archery in general?
I haven't even thought about this.
Excellent. You have time now.
Can I start with the best thing?
Sure.
I haven't thought about this either. I suppose...
Alec.
Hello.
Oh, I was going to say, mate, give him some time. You or Ben can go.
No, I'm quite happy putting him on the spot.
How specific am I going?
Oh, it's up to you. Just remember, we're trying to avoid the explicit icon on iTunes, so if we can just keep it.
This is a PG podcast.
PG, yeah.
All right.
That's why I want it.
So not that one if you're thinking it.
All right. Last year, I did my first Vegas shoot in the 2018 season, and the first day I shot a clean 300, and dropped some points the next few days, but on the first day, sort of walking off the line and grabbing my target and just like strolling around. It was just a great feeling seeing mates that I haven't seen for a while, and they're just like, "Oh, hey, great job, mate." Just a great community.
Yeah, well, shooting a 300 on your first round ever in Vegas is a pretty big deal.
I shot an 8 the next day.
Is that your worst or?
No.
Do you want to?
It'd be more impressive if it wasn't with training wheels, but whatever.
Wow, throwing some heat.
Got me there.
Do you want to do your worst thing as well, Hamish, or do you want some time to think about that?
I'll need some time to think.
All right. Kane, do you have a best moment in archery?
I don't think I can define them as moments. I don't know what I love archery for just like that one shot in every 300 or so, where it's just like it's like the stars align and the shot just comes off perfect and everything. It's like feels blissful. You're like, where did that come from? I want to chase that again. I think that's always what's kept me motivated to keep shooting. Just those, and then Mickey Mouse arrows that just Yeah.
Lovely terminology.
That being said, that time that we took 6 hours to shoot 90 metres in Adelaide and ordered pizza to the shooting line was pretty good.
Oh, that's right. I remember the guy ringing us on the road, like trying to locate target 32 or whatever we were.
The man was half drowned by the time he got the pizza to us.
That was great. Damn, that was going to be my best one. All right, well, damn. Okay, that was a good story. Ben?
Oh, God. I reckon for my worst moment, flashing back to being 13 years old, actually, I'd gone to a tournament and a couple of days beforehand realised that I'd actually lost a screw out of my pressure button. Had a friend of mine say, "Oh, it's all good. I've got a screw you can put in." So they put it in. It was a bit long, but it worked. And they went, "Oh, and just make sure it doesn't come out. We'll super glue it in." So we super glued it in. Everything was going great. Started the tournament, which also happened to be the state and national indoor champs that year. And pretty much the entire day had my arrows just consistently grouping right. But they were consistent each end, but they would change between ends further and further right. So after probably 40 arrows of complaining about my bow being broken, I had my coach go, "Okay, no, like just focus on your shot." I spent another end focusing on it. He went, "Okay, that looked great. Let's see where they went." And they'd actually managed to hit someone else's target about 1.5 foot to the right. So he went, "Okay, maybe something is wrong." Had him check my pressure button. I went, "Oh, maybe that's what's wrong." And it turns out that the thread we'd put in was a bit too big. So it had screwed in, but it hadn't actually screwed in and bitten into the plunger. So basically the entire time I was shooting, I just had my pressure button becoming looser and looser until it eventually fell apart. So that was definitely the worst experience shooting an archery tournament. Yeah, it's a bit tough to think about the best.
It's so positive.
No, it's just there's a lot of like good moments. It's hard to single out any one of them as the best. I remember being pretty excited the first time I competed at a World Field as a junior and actually made the cut at 16th. That was really big to me, considering I decided to train a lot for that event, and then 3 days before the tournament, I realised I hadn't shot for 2 weeks. So that's probably my best. What about you, Alec?
My best moment. I'm trying to think non-tournaments. Tournament-wise, it'd probably be when we got our quota spots for Rio. That was pretty cool.
Or the medal or anything.
Well, that was okay as well.
I like that.
No, I think the quota spots was bigger because that felt like that was what we had the most pressure on. There was more build up to that than there was the actual games, I think. That's probably my best. Yeah, there's been a lot of good times. It's hard to single them out. I'd put it down to that for that tournament, I'd say. Just winning the quota spots, and yeah, there's a lot of build up and a lot of stress, and to actually get them was pretty cool. Ben's knocked off his worst one already, so he gets to sit out this round. So, Hamish, have you had time to think of your worst moment?
Yes. I've actually got a toss-up between two.
Do you want a moment to think about whether it's suitable to say on the podcast, or are you going to jump straight in?
No, I'll tell them both.
All right.
Well, the first one was also at World Field in 2016. I qualified pretty mediocre, barely scraped by, I think 2 elimination rounds, and just ended up in a 3-way shoot-off to get into a medal match. And I'd never been in a 3-way shoot-off before. And it was 60 metres on a 80 centimetre face. And I lost by about a millimetre. One fellow shot a 5, I shot a 6, which I thought was pretty nifty, and another dude shot a little better 6. So he got the spot, which is, yeah, can't complain, but that night was just wasn't that fun.
Did you have lots of dominoes?
We did. We ordered a lot of pizza from a local store.
Excellent.
Gave them a little rent for their year. And the other time was, Alec, you'll remember this.
Oh, great.
We used to hunt just rabbits on private properties. We'd just go door knocking and ask the landowners if we could just shoot rabbits and foxes on their places in Melbourne. And one day we were out one afternoon and it was getting dark, and we called up a fellow who we had access to, and we said, "Look, mate, is it okay if we come by after dark? Like, we know you have horses, but we have spotlights, so it's no problem. Like, we'll look out for them." And he's like, "Yeah, no worries, boys. Like, no problems at all. I'll see the lights." And so we rocked up and had the spotlights out looking for rabbits. And we saw a fellow, excuse me, saw this fellow come out on the veranda with a gun,
that's right.
yelling profanities and screaming to get out of his yard. So we sort of yelling back to him, like trying to identify ourselves, and eventually we got it sorted out. But yeah, a bit of a tense moment there for a minute.
I'd forgotten that.
I hadn't. I still have nightmares.
Funnily enough, I haven't actually been back to that property.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no.
He was so welcoming.
No, well, I thought I'd bring him round some cheese and biscuits as a thank you, but I just haven't got around to it. I've just kind of, not that keen looking down the barrel. So,
but no harm done.
Nah, just everyone.
Should gift him a box of
PTSD.
blanks just to save yourself next time.
It's all right. Everyone points a shotgun at everyone else every now and then, don't they? That's pretty normal, right?
Probably a bit risky to put on a podcast.
All right, Kane. What's your worst thing? Anything as risky as Hamish's, or?
No. If you will remember, I was, favoured for going to the Youth Olympics, but for some odd reason, not going to make any assumptions as to why, all rode on one competition as opposed to like qualification scores and all that. I put the pressure on myself, cooked it, missed out in the Youth Olympic spot. That was pretty upsetting.
Well, that took a turn.
Yeah, that's about it. It's not as exciting. I think anything wouldn't be as exciting as getting a gun pointed at you.
Why couldn't you keep it lighthearted like my one?
I'm just going to play some happy music in the background.
Lighthearted, mate. You almost got shot.
Well, we'll move on from both of you two, and you're now banned from any future comments. I have 3 worst things.
I bet I can guess one.
No, that's not on. Whatever it is, it's not on the list.
Guessing.
So Hamish doesn't get to guess any. My first worst thing was shooting the car park at the Rio Test event. That was pretty cool. We were shooting in a concrete arena with a big wall at the back, and quite a few people shot the back wall, but I managed to shoot under the back wall and skim off into the car park. So when someone came back with my arrow, was going, "Oh, is anyone missing an arrow?" I just kind of ignored them and then quietly went up and got it later on. There are also a lot of cats around this arena, and I was a bit worried that I'd skewered a local animal, but thankfully that didn't happen. And interestingly enough, at the actual Olympics, they had wooden barriers over that point, so I like to think I did the safety audit for them, so that was good. My my second one would be when I was in New Zealand in 2012. It was really windy, rainy when we were shooting field, and I was walking down a steep hill using my long rod as a pole, and I tripped down the hill and snapped my extender in half, and then shot the last 5 or 6 targets, alternating between no side rods, one side rod, or putting one rod up the top, one down the bottom. They all felt horrible, but I made it through without breaking any more stabilisers.
You've broken them all, that's why.
And I believe that's it for my worst moments in archery. Just those two.
Wasn't there a third?
I don't believe there was. Are we happy to wrap up this topic right now?
I think we should.
No.
For all our own safeties.
So, moving on from this topic, the last thing, which is something actually quite good to mention because it doesn't come up a lot. It's more of a recurve thing, or probably light poundage compound, is when you're shooting a lot of arrows at blank butt or short distance just to try and grind out a good volume of arrows. Especially if you're shooting at home at a short distance, it's really easy to be aiming low, like you're pointing your arrow down or flat. And if you shoot a lot of arrows that way and then go out to 70 meters where your body's at an angle, it can take a while to adjust. So it's certainly something to be very wary of if you're shooting a high volume of arrows at short range. Kane, did you want to add anything to this topic?
Yeah, I think it's really, really overlooked because I've been to ranges that have it's mostly not among beta ranges because they're pretty well adhere to, I don't know, a standard of height or something. But even when you're shooting a long distance like 70, and like if the target's like 300 mil higher or lower, like I reckon it really does mess with you, especially probably among those who shoot recurve and even the low poundage compound, but especially low poundage recurve as well, because some of them poor boys and girls are practically shooting clout to get Olympic distance, which is 70, and it throws your alignment out of whack, your shoulder, because you're used to shooting like a perfect T form, you're nice and level, and that elevation can really knock you about. And as the host Olympian, I was wondering if you were to coach someone, how would you say to get around such an issue if they were having trouble with it?
I don't know when I became the host, and I'm quite happy to pass that on. Kane, congratulations, you're now the host. You can do all the editing after this podcast, which there is none because we never edit. I think
probably it's pretty terrible.
I know. When I was training a lot more a while ago, I would just get a 11 and just sit it a little bit higher. So even if I wasn't aiming directly at the angle 70 should be, I was at least giving a bit of extra angle. And I know shooting down at the shop, I either make sure whenever I shoot 18 meters, I'm shooting a target at the top of the butt. And when I'm shooting volume, I go to literally like 2 meters so I can aim right at the top of the target butt. Or if I'm wanting to shoot a little bit of distance, like 18 or 30, I'll take a normal target frame and then put an 11 and sit it on top. And then just literally have a ladder next to it to pull the arrows out. Because then it gives you that same kind of angle. So I think, there's lots of things you can do, especially people that are shooting at home. Is just put their target on a table or just some way of suspending it so you're still getting a bit of that angle.
Yeah, right. So just always have an elevated target as opposed to trying to, change your form to suit.
Yeah, I think so, because I think you could shoot 70, you could shoot a lot of 70 and go to 18 and it would feel fine. But if you shoot a lot of 18 and go to 70, it's not quite the same. Because I think when you're shooting 18 meters, it's flat and it's easy to get through the clicker. If you're doing that all the time, then you go back to 70, it almost feels like your draw length is different, like it's harder to get through. Whereas when you're shooting flat, it's easy. So if you go from difficult to easy, it feels easy. Whereas you go the other way, then you start struggling.
I think the further you go from norm, it just gets more uncomfortable. So a lot of field shooters would also understand that on some of those extreme downhills, you don't get them as much on like Australian courses, of course. But yeah, when you're shooting big downhills, you get the same effect as aiming on a slant uphill. Like it can get very difficult because you're almost moving your shoulders in a completely different way. Like instead of moving them in a straight parallel direction, like away from each other, it almost feels like when you're aiming up, like you're pulling your front arm, like your back arm down, like you're pulling arm down. And yeah, when you're shooting down, like you're almost pulling up into the shot. So I think, yeah, definitely like shooting a lot of arrows on like differing angles can help a lot rather than at a fixed distance. So yeah, if you were going for like a really big arrow count, like 200-300 arrows at blank butt, I reckon there'd be a lot to gain from shooting with the target normal height, above average height, and even below average height, just to really help teach your body that it's not so much about the position it's in, it's about the action it's doing. So yeah, really focusing on pulling through that clicker cleanly. Doesn't matter where like your shoulders are, because at the end of the day, wherever you shoot, it's going to be slightly different. It's impossible to have everything the exact same every time. I think you'd even agree with this, Alec, like when you're at the test events over years and stuff like that, that every place you shoot is slightly different. You're never going to shoot on the exact same field, and it's always good to teach your body new things in a sport.
Yeah, I think field's a good one to bring up and mention, because that can certainly be really, really good at training your body to shoot all those different angles. To throw some more controversy into this podcast, if you look at all the top recurve archers, maybe excluding Korea, all of them shoot target, all of them shoot field, all of them shoot indoor, a lot of them shoot compound, a lot of them shoot 3D. They shoot pretty much everything. And they tend
Australians.
to be... Huh?
Not the Australians.
Internationally, looking at the top archers.
Oh.
So I think there's a lot to be said for those archers that shoot a lot of different types. I think some people throw around the term like a target specialist or a field specialist, or specialising in one division, which I think is rubbish. I think you can't... I think if you stand there and shoot 70 metres all day, there comes a point. I mean, even for archers just training to shoot 70, you get them to shoot blank butt and you get them to train at shorter distances and things to work on their form. So I think shooting things like field, even... I'm going to say the word, we'll have to beat this out later. Even shooting clout. Sorry. Oh, damn, iTunes has just blocked us.
It's now R18 plus.
I feel like doing all that stuff helps. And looking at, especially the American archers, some of the top shooters over there that have compounds, that shoot 3D, that shoot target, that shoot field, that shoot indoor, that shoot all of that stuff, they tend to be the most, not just the best, but the most consistent. And I think it's really... I think if you just pick one discipline, unless it's simply you going, I like target, I don't like shooting fields, all I'm going to shoot is target, that's fine. But if you're avoiding shooting other disciplines purely because you're saying, I've just got to focus on 70 metres, I think you're actually doing yourself a disservice. So I feel like it's really important, not only for what we're discussing with the angle, but just for generally building your skill as an archer to shoot all those different disciplines.
Especially like you look at a country that a lot of archers you see out of it don't actually shoot a lot of other distance. So very similar to Korea, Japan, currently they have the world field champion at men's recurve. He actually holds the title. He's the first Japanese archer to ever win a world field.
Yeah.
And that just shows, and he's actually one of the best Japanese archers, full stop. So to see that it doesn't matter where you're coming from, as long as you're willing to put the time in and shoot, the right things, and always willing to try something new, that there can always be, like, you can always gain something new from a new experience.
Yeah, well, Brady Ellison won, what was it, like
World Field
individual silver at Rio 2016, and then backed it up with a World Field gold a couple of months later.
Yeah, and Jake Kaminsky won silver in the teams in London, and then I think it was silver individually at World Field the same year. It's happened so many times. And I mean, even just down to taking performance aside, just continuity and enjoyment in the sport, I think if you sit there and do the same thing day in, day out, it just wears you down after a while. So even like this weekend, Ben and I went and shot 3D. Tonight we're shooting indoor. Tomorrow I'm going to go shoot some outdoor. Just mixing it up, I think, because at the end of the day, you're still shooting arrows and you're still improving. So I think just for your own sake of not getting boring, basically, is just to mix it up and shoot that extra stuff.
I think I can, attempt to relate it to fitness, but in terms of like diminishing return, so it's obviously harder to add 10 points to your 720 score if you're shooting, 690s compared to if you're shooting 600s. So if you're shooting just consistently 70 meters and nothing else, and then you shoot some indoor, some field, some clout.
Oh, settle. Calm down.
I told you no swearing.
That's sort of similar to doing assistance exercises in the gym. So if you're working on powerlifting and you want to get better at your bench press, then you might do incline press or decline press or I don't know, a bunch of push-ups or whatever.
Yeah.
So they're all different exercises and they're all good for their specific role.
Yeah.
And that's similar to, field is its own competition, target is its own competition, but they all benefit each other.
Yeah. It's all
I hope
really...
that makes sense. But I don't think I'm literate enough to convey it very well.
Speaking as someone that knows exactly what Hamish said with all of those words, I think what you're trying to get at is that there's improvements to be made just by changing things up anywhere.
Exactly.
And by limiting yourself to one discipline, you're compromising your ability to learn from, as Ben said, different experiences that will make you on the whole a better archer. If it's like, if you can smash arrows in the gold at 70, you're likely to be able to do the same at field or 3D and probably pick something up along the way too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The more comfortable you are with archery in general, so if you feel comfortable shooting 3D, if you feel comfortable shooting field, target, clout, indoor, everything, the more you make yourself comfortable with doing different things, the easier it is when you do, travel internationally or any of that, because you might be in a new experience, but you've proven to yourself that you can beat those new experiences. You've learned that there is more to gain from doing something that is new than something that you've tried 100 times. And yeah.
Even, I know there was a post a while ago John Dudley put up when he was training for indoor, saying to make sure you don't always shoot the bottom target or the middle target or something when you put up a 3 spot, to try and alternate the spot you put it at. Because he was saying something like something to do with your muscles getting used to shooting in one position and you're not developing those smaller supporting muscles by not aiming at different spots. So even down to that level, just literally putting your front arm in different spots when you're shooting and kind of building muscle in different areas that you wouldn't if you were just shooting 70 all day.
Yeah.
Just swap hands. Just go to a left-handed bow for a change.
Well, Kane went from left-handed to right-handed. Oh, here's a good story about Kane. I remember in 2010, Kane shooting Trans-Tasman with duct tape on his top limb.
Excuse me, it was the bottom limb.
Sorry, the bottom limb. Is this something you've tried since?
Was that for his side?
Look, I'd be tempted to do it on my hunting bow because, like, that thing's pumped full of more hormones than a Christmas turkey, like. And I just kind of almost want to protect myself against them blowing up in case, I just thought maybe that'd help keep the limbs together because there's a lot of strain under them.
It's only 80 pounds, isn't it?
Yeah, 84 or so.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of duct tape, I think. Just hold the limbs in, it'll be fine.
One day you'll join the 100-pound club like us.
Yeah, no. The what, sorry?
The 100-pound club. It's okay, it was with a longbow and we held it for a second, but we did it.
So did I, and then I woke up.
And my arm broke.
Is there anything else you boys want to add to that last topic?
Just with just real quick, with like, in terms of taking a break from shooting 70 metres over and over. In relation back to fitness again, it's sort of similar to taking that deload week or two just to reset the mind, because again, I see archery as predominantly mental. And yeah, I think many would agree, just taking that time to relax, switch off, and then get back into it. And yeah, if you're in the gym, then you come back and you're stronger than ever. And I think that's very similar in archery.
Yeah, I think it can certainly pay to. I think some people are almost afraid to take breaks. So it can, yeah. I think you've got to just listen to. How does this not sound cheesy? Oh, it's going to sound cheesy. But listen to. No, not listen to your heart.
Sorry.
Throw a bit more cheese on it.
A bit more cheesy.
Just listen to what you feel you need. If you want to take a break, take a break. And I think that, yeah, if you just go train hard all the time, it's probably not going to help as much as if you actually took a bit of time off and went back mentally refreshed. So
that's pretty cheesy.
That is a bit cheesy. Not as much as listen to your heart, but it's up there.
It's pretty close.
Just ask Hamish. Fitness, it's all about reps. Do 100 push-ups, take 100 days off.
Is that correct, Hamish? Can you deny or confirm?
I prefer to take the 100 days off first.
I thought 100 push-ups is 100.
It's
100 McChickens, isn't it?
Yeah. Push up
like
chicken. Repeat.
Push up nugget. Push up nugget.
100 fork pull-ups.
All right, now we're going down the rabbit hole. Anything else you want to add before we close off this podcast?
No. Good
No.
to go.
Excellent. All right, so
Is there an Easter egg in this podcast?
Yeah, there has been. Yeah, I'm not going to mention what it is, but there has been.
Yeah, right.
All right, so this is Eliza Archery.
Who did it?
Sorry, I'm just trying to do the outro here. If you could just give me a moment.
Stop talking.
I do what I want.
That's enough out of you.
So this has been Eliza Archery podcast episode 3. So these are on Spotify, Podbean. It should be on iTunes soon, and they're also on elizaarchery.com. If you go to the blog section there, all the podcasts will be there as well. We'll aim to try and get another one of these out next Monday. But until then, thank you for listening.